Okay, hi everyone, it's Tony E with Show IP Interface Brief, and today I wanted to go over how to add some base configs to the IOU-WEB setup. I previously did a short video saying that this was my CCIE lab setup and what I was using, and I finally reached a point in the workbook where I didn't have the base configs already pre-staged. So I needed to go ahead and hand jam them in, and that took a long time and really impeded my progress. And so I'm taking the time tonight to go ahead and preload the rest of the configs and templates so I can continue on through the workbook. It's just one of these things I have to do. In doing so, adding the base configs and the templates is not very intuitive from this menu. And the research that I did online and any YouTube videos that I found did not have it in clear English, or was not in English at all, or just didn't have very good examples, things that related to this particular version that I'm running here. So let me break down this screen a little bit. This is the one of the labs, they call it the laboratories, and this is the INE route switch version 5 config lab. This is the actual topology, the interconnection of the devices. The interconnection of the devices, if you guys have seen the topology before, that doesn't change. The only thing that changes is the underlying config. So for example, router 2 and 3 are always connected. Routers 8 and 10 are always connected. The only thing that changes is the base config. And here's some of the base configs that came preloaded in this VM already. You had the basic BGP routing, basic EIGRP routing, basic IP addressing, so that had no routing at all. And then initial BGP, EIGRP, multicast, things like that. And I finally did a lab yesterday where it said, please load the whatever config, the initial, and I forget which one it was a BGP config. And I didn't have that in the list. So what came with this VM was also a folder that had what I call all of the initial configs. So here should be all of the initial configs for the labs. And inside of each one, for example, I'm going to do one here to show everybody an example, is a small text file with the 10 routers. Okay, if we open up one of those, we can see it's just standard router config. Okay, so how do we go about getting that config, creating a base config, a template that we can reload, load and reload again in the future? If we highlight the lab and we go over to the little pencil and book over here on the right side, that allows us to edit the configuration for this topology. Here's some general information up here, the name of it, the description. I'm going to scroll down past here. This is the net map. This actually connects the VMs. So this is VM1, port 01 connected to VM11 on port 00. So this is the interconnection of all of the routers back to the switch. And then here is the outline of our 11 devices, the last one being a switch. From this top drop-down menu, I can choose any of the pre-staged config templates, like the ones you just saw. In the case of INE, I can do basic BGP routing. And when I select that and I click Save, and if I go back to that menu, you'll see it went ahead and applied that to each device here on the right side. So every device has their own piece of the config. In this case, it's router 1, and in this case, it says router 1. If I click off of that and I go down to router 2, it says router 2, and they're all sharing basic BGP routing, which is the choice we chose at the top. So to start from scratch, I'm going to go ahead and do empty, do a save, go back to confirm, good, and I have them all here as empty. All right, back to the topology here, back to the control screen. I'll click on the lab itself, go over here to the devices in the top left, the devices tab. All these devices are shown as red, so I know that they are all off. I will go ahead and power them all on. All devices started. They've turned green. I'm going to launch multi-tab PuTTY. I had my sessions open. Now they are closed. So the easiest way for me to do it is just to go through and close them all and just reopen them one at a time. Doesn't take very long. And I only have to do it in between labs. So not a big deal. All right, so we're stuck on this screen. So I'm going to send a command to all of them. I'm going to select all, send it. Sometimes it takes a minute when it reboots like this, reboots the router. Okay, so here we have the initial configuration dialog. All right, and I just wanted to, I'm on router 1 right now. I'm going to scroll through all of these, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, just to show you we are default on all of them. So I'll go ahead and say no, send that to all of them. Then they will all complete their boot sequence. So this means they should all be loading with no config, just the raw configs. I'll send a couple of blank lines there. Okay, and as you can see, they all have the host name of router. As I click through router 2, router 3, router 4, router 5, they all have the host name router. All right, so I'll ditch these tabs. I'll throw this on the right side of the screen. I'll find my baseline configs. They came here packaged in the folder. So again, this one we're going to do IPsec VPN. I'm just going to launch them all sequentially in Notepad++. This is really a cumbersome and manual process for me, which is why I wanted to go ahead and get this done. A lot of these baseline configs are reused over many labs. So if I just take the time to do this once, I can do a quick reset when I have to redo a lab or move on to another section that calls that same baseline. So again, I'll just go ahead and copy this. It begins with enable and config terminal. We know running configs don't typically have that, so someone went ahead and pre-staged that for us. I've been pretty lucky with just pasting these in. Occasionally I'll have an error of a wrong interface. And for example, what I just did there was I pasted in router 10's config into what would be router 1. So I'm going to want to do that again. In fact, if I just do a reload, no, proceed with reload, I'll pop over and start doing router 2. Okay, so it's a bit cumbersome. It's a manual process. It doesn't take too long. I may stop the video so you don't have to watch me paste them all in. But I can generally get through them once I get in the groove. It takes me less than a minute to go ahead and paste them all in. So I'll go ahead and stop the video here. I'll complete what I'm doing, and I'll reset the console on router 1 and paste the correct config in there for router 1. Okay, and we're back. I went ahead and corrected router 1's configuration. I reloaded it, pasted in the correct config, and we should be good to go. I will do a show IP interface brief and a show IP route. Looks like I'm only, let me maximize this. Looks like I'm only learning connected and local routes. But I should see some EIGRP, and I am not. So you don't have to do this check. I do it, which tells me that I don't have reachability from device to device. So I'm going to come over to the switch, and instead of SSHing into it, I'm just going to use the little web console here. It's been pretty good for me. If I do an enable, if I take a look, I've actually pre-staged a config in the flash, excuse me, the simulated flash of this switch. So if I do dir Unix : you're going to see I have a running config there. So if I do copy Unix : running to the running config, I guess first I should show you that show run. There is no config here. It is really, really baseline. There's no VLAN config. These are not trunk interfaces. And if we do show VTP status, we can see this is server. So we're not going to see it in the running config, the VLAN configuration. So in the running config, I went ahead and just made everything a trunk. In fact, you can see that configuration here. Bring it up for you. Here's my little template for that. VTP mode transparent. I just go ahead and slam in 1,000 VLANs and turn every interface into a trunk with .1q tagging. That's what's in the running config already. So I'll do copy Unix running and turn that into the running config. Now I'll do show run. And you see I have my VLANs here. The interfaces are popping. And all of our interfaces are trunks and encapsulated in .1q. Okay, that means we should start to see some EIGRP adjacencies forming. There we go. Here's an EIGRP adjacency. Okay. Okay. If we just turn this off now, there's no way for it to go ahead and boot back to this state. So there's a couple of things we got to do. I'm going to go ahead and use the send to all terminals, send a script. I'm going to do enter. I like to do that a couple of times. Write mem, then I'm going to do copy. Excuse me. There's probably already something in the simulated flash here, so I'll do it on this one. Show Unix. Excuse me. There is a running config in there. I don't want it to get confused, so I'm going to say that's on all of them. Delete Unix. And I'm going to hit enter twice. Send that to everybody. Here, are you sure you want to delete? Yes. Looks like I need one more carriage return. I'll put that in, send it. So now all of the terminals should be good to go. Okay, they're all at privilege exec, so I'm going to do a write mem, then I'm going to do copy run to Unix. Enter, enter, enter. Okay, I'll cycle through all my tabs. Looks like it was all successful. I know my switch is successful. Now I'll go back to our IOU-WEB control screen. And this little icon here says copy all Unix running config files to database. Remember, we just stored our running config to Unix running config. So it's going to grab all the devices and store that to the database. Here's where I got confused last night. After I clicked this, I couldn't find out where in the hell the files went. I'll go ahead and run it. It'll give you an error if it didn't export all of the configs. That one just told me that it was successful. So where does it store the files? You go back to your laboratory. It actually stores the files in the same name as the lab you were just in. So we're in this lab, and the only file here that shares the same name, sans the UD, is this one right here. Okay, so if I click this, this is going to have the output of the running config for all 11 devices. That's 10 routers and a switch. What we should do, and what we have to do now, is go ahead and name it. So I like to name it what it's called here, IPsec VPN. I'm going to click the pencil book over here, do space, IPsec VPN. I'm going to highlight this, copy it, and hit save. And when I hit save, it's going to take this tab away. R1's tab is going to be gone. The R1 disappeared. Now I'm at R10. So I'm going to click here, paste, because I already had that in my clipboard. And when I click save, R10's tab is going to disappear. And now we're on R2. And you'll see I'll repeat this. It'll go R2 to R3 to R4. I'll stop the video here, complete the rest, and show you what the next step is. Okay, upon clicking save on the very last tab, which is the switch tab, it brought me back to this screen. And you can see we have a new item down here. with the name we just chose, IPsec VPN. When we select it, it has all of our devices here with the configs we just moved over. So we just went ahead and renamed it. And the lab that we were working on previously, it was in this location, and it was called INERS version 5 config lab. And it was just sitting right here. It did not have a trailing title after it. That's no longer there. So basically we just renamed it, each and every one of the configs, and put it in here. So what does this mean for us? Let's go back to the lab, go to devices. I'm going to use this one, which is stop all devices and wipe all configurations. Deleted all configurations. I'll go back to our lab, and what I want to do is I actually want to choose this as our base config option. So I'm going to choose that, so when I boot this lab, I want it to boot in with these base configs that we just selected. But to do that, I come over to the book and pencil, scroll down, and choose the IPsec VPN. Save. Just to double check, if I go back, all of the individual routers should now have the IPsec VPN chosen. Even the switch should be chosen. Now I go into the control panel for the lab, and I want to boot all of these devices. Back to multi-tab PuTTY. Again, my terminals are all closed. I'll reboot them. Okay, you can see in the startup logs, we already have some EIGRP adjacencies being formed, which means we're booting directly into that, that configuration. Whereas last time, we did not. We booted into a blank configuration. Okay, that wraps it up for this video. I hope it was informative. I'm sure I'm a bit long-winded, but I hope this helped to shed a little bit of light on the process for adding different configuration files to a single lab, so you can switch between them. A lot of the help documentation and websites that had resources on it weren't very clear, and so I had to fumble my way through it last night unsuccessfully, but we figured it out today. Okay, if you guys know a better way, a shorter way, a faster way to do this, please leave me a comment. I would love to find out the better way to do this. Otherwise, I'm stuck doing this manual process. Again, I try to go a little bit into detail for this video, but I can get the process down to just a couple of minutes per topology, but it still takes a while to take it all in and validate that it's done correctly. So thanks for watching.